Hello, I'm Richard Heathen, and this is Liberty Machine News on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Today we will cover a number of stories, including states spying on civilian populations and how the Communication Security Establishment of Canada, known as CSEC, is just as every bit as guilty as the NSA within the United States. We will also cover how General Petraeus declared the rise of North America after the decline of the United States. I will also update you about a story I covered last week with Josh Steffler, the United Nations involving itself in the water crisis in Detroit. This is Liberty Machine News on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Hello. Our first story is CSEC spying on Canadians, just like the NSA spied on Americans. CSEC, also known as the Communication Security Establishment of Canada, is given money by the NSA to develop surveillance capabilities, according to documents published by Greg Greenwald in his new book, No Place to Hide. Canada and the U.S., Australia, and New Zealand constitute what is a network known as the Five Eyes. Now, this network was formed after World War II to kind of keep an eye on basically the world. It was the rise of the Anglo-American Empire and really just kind of reaching out into the world to try and maintain its hegemony through a surveillance kind of network. It was also meant to kind of keep an eye on the Soviets because they were a competing power block that really was set up through the big Wall Street interests, as Anthony Sutton covered in his work. Now, what's interesting is these world leaders actually just spy on each other a lot because they spied on each other during the 2010 during the G20 conference in Toronto, and they also spied on each other. CSEC was part of this with the NSA, and they also spied each other on the 2009 G20 meeting in London. And this is according to the Guardian newspaper. It's interesting because they worked together on this. The NSA was given permission and help from the Canadian government and through CSEC to spy on each other. Now, CSEC is not supposed to spy on Canadians, but routinely does so incidentally. It even admits that it does as much. The CSEC and the NSA, they routinely trade information about each other. Now, this is going to go into our other story because this is really, on a larger scale, represents the integration of Canada and the United States. That's something we'll be going into a little later, but yeah, the mass integration of Canada and the United States is coming. They're planning it. They've talked about it. Diane Francis, an author out of Canada, a globalist who's been to a lot of think tanks and groups within the United States, she openly is called in a op-ed, and I think she wrote a book, I think, about it. We're talking about how Canada. It's called. Her book was titled "Merger of the Century." It was about the rise of a North American superstate and how Canada and the United States should actually merge. Now, this isn't getting much play here in Canada because most people just dismiss it because a merger is not really very popular here in Canada, American elites are more interested in. And the Canadian elites, I think, especially the Laurentian elite or the Laurentian consensus, they're skeptical because I think they realize that it would lessen their power, lessen their ability to kind of control the status quo here in Canada. They want globalism, but they want globalism through a United Nations paradigm, not a North American paradigm. The Laurentian elite were basically the ones in control since Confederation. They want peace. They want us subservient to the United Nations, giving up our sovereignty to the United Nations, not to North American superstate. I think they just want to kind of skip the incremental step of an North American power bloc to the United Nations. They, like I said, they're very leftist, and so they really are more on board with the social agenda of the United Nations. Now, I covered the social agenda of the United Nations last week with Josh Steffler. Now, I talked about how they are, really advocating for this far left-wing socialism, what I call economic and cultural Marxism. They've pushed for social justice, and social justice is just a vague catch-all term for anything that really doesn't appeal to the left. Basically, they can use social justice as a banner to hide behind or use anytime they want to call for government intervention or wealth distribution, or anytime they use their bullshit white privilege arguments or male privilege arguments, because it just is easier for them to kind of hide behind that banner when they want to use it as for a movement for social change. They really aren't not into liberty, freedom, or any kind of autonomy for the individual. They really are pushing this big government idea, and I think the United Nations has to push this big government idea, because if they don't, they will become... If they don't, they have no other avenue to expand. The American military already is the military might of the world, combined with NATO, the countries of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So I think the far left-wing agenda really is an avenue for them to expand and grow as a world federal government. They're using, like I said, they're basically expanding how any federal government would expand. They're using every excuse they can to kind of get their claws in, expand their scope, expand the tentacles of their reach, so they can, use it as a precedent to grow stronger. But anyways, back to the spying here in Canada. CSEC, or the Community Security Establishment of Canada, works closely with the NSA as a part of the Five Eyes agency, as I mentioned earlier. According to a digital law professor, Michael Geist, the majority of the major telecommunications companies have established their own law enforcement databases. In one document, the Competition Bureau declared that it had accessed the Bell Canada law enforcement database 20 times in 1 year. And I think only one, I don't even know if any of those times had a warrant. I think one time they had a warrant. So anytime the police want access to your internet traffic, any data you might have, they have an open door through the telecom companies. This is corporate fascism. This is when the state and corporations work together to basically further their own interests. In a free market, this stuff wouldn't fly. There would be so many people out there providing telecommunication services, all these services, that there just would not be... They wouldn't do it, because if they did, they would lose customers. But this is not what it is like in a corporate fascist environment, which we have in North America. The Border Security Agency, the Canadian Border Security Agency, accessed telecommunication subscriber data 18,849 times in 1 year from April 2012 to March 2013. That's just one department of the federal government. Like, imagine what all the others are doing. Like, think about how many times your data might just be snooped upon by the state. We don't have any privacy rights. We don't have anything that protects us. All this idea of a constitution and that these rights that we have, they're an illusion that makes us more complacent and allows us to produce more, because captive livestock, and really that's what we are to the ruling classes. We are just human livestock to produce and plunder. We produce more when we think we are free, when our cages are bigger, we're not as stressed, and we produce more. Allowing us to pick our own occupation in this controlled environment allows us to produce more for the pillagers of society, which really is the state and its enforcers. According to a new survey for the Canadian Internet Registration Authority by Ipsos Reid, 49% of Canadians feel perfectly all right that the government is spying on their online activities. The word jumps to 77% when the boogeyman of terrorism is thrown around. I really got to think. I'm going to have Tim Moen on again, hopefully next week, to discuss the by-election he was part of. And it really makes me sad. This makes me sad because, why are Canadians just like docile sheep happily led to slaughter? Why? What is it about our national makeup that makes us just so pathetic? No, like, at least Americans, they've got the Tea Party movement, and yeah, the Tea Party are statists, and they're not perfect, but there's at least some sort of recognition that government should not regulate and lord over every aspect of our lives. Here in Canada, no. Well, government is our friend. Government's here to help us. No, like, government is slavery. Government is slavery. They are they're an institution with a monopoly on force where they declare themselves magical rights to be above everyone else. Now, notice how politicians and police officers are never held accountable for the laws they break. The cops are never held accountable for beating, raping, destroying people. No, they're never held accountable for that. Instead, it's us, human beings, citizens, tax cows, that are held accountable, and the rest of us and the rest of them, they laugh at us. They laugh at us because they're not subjected to the same rules we are. It's sad because Tim, he put on a good campaign. He's an amazing messenger for liberty. He's one of the most articulate messengers for liberty I've ever seen. And he was only able to get 3% of the vote. 3% of the fucking vote. That's just, it's disheartening. It's really disheartening, I don't know. I wonder why Canadians are such docile sheep when it comes to these issues. Why? Why are we so willing to have the state tell us what to do? I have a theory that basically our national identity is kind of shaped through the idea that we're reasonable people who don't have revolutions and we're not violent, and basically America was founded by revolutionaries. Yeah, and I know the founding fathers weren't perfect, but at least they had the chutzpah to rise up against the tyranny of the crown. Canada was founded by statist bootlickers who were thrown out of the United States for being loyal to the oppressors, and so we were founded by a bunch of statist redcoat sympathizers. And, we've been statist redcoat sympathizers ever since. And it's quite frankly, I think it's pathetic. I think it's really, really pathetic. So yeah, guess what? Check out the articles. There's articles on the Huffington Post, Global Research, any and all news sites. This is open information. I think the Harper government had to shut down one spying program because it was too aggressive. Either that it was too aggressive, probably was going to get them caught. So, we are every bit as spied on as the United States ever was. And this isn't a Harper. This is systemic. This isn't something you can just blame on Harper because he's the big evil dictator. Yeah, Harper sucks, but guess what? This shit was going on before Harper. It was going on under liberals. It was going on under everyone. Because, like I said, Canada has been part of the Five Eyes intelligence network since late World War II, since after World War II. So it's really just, it's systemic. And do you think really that this is the first time that they've spied on people and shared intelligence? Like, even before the age of the internet, these people would get together and share information about each other, or each other's citizens. Now, our next story, General David Petraeus, he recently spoke at the Margaret Thatcher Conference on Liberty. Yeah, that's rich. A bunch of these globalist statist bootlickers talking about liberty like they know what that word means. Somehow, I don't think that word means what I think you think it means there, bro. He declared the coming North American decade, I think he called it. After America comes North America, because there was a panel discussion on the decline of the United States and what that meant for the rest of the world. And referencing his course he teaches at the City University of New York, he said that, are we on the threshold of the North America decade, ? I threw away the question mark, and boldly proclaimed the North American decade. That is now the title of his course. Yeah, so that is, we've all known this is coming. We've all known that the North American decade, that there is a plan. Some people call it a North American Union. I don't use that terminology because the North American Union would assume that it was formed after a European-style union. Well, in the European Union, all countries come together, at least in theory, as equals. They all come together at a round table. It's all the stars on the EU flag mean that they represent the member countries coming around a table. Well, that's not like that in North America. Any trilateral agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico always involves the United States being the kind of the decider, having the most say, the most representatives, Canada being number 2, because we're, polite little Canadians. We just go along to get along and generally do what we're told. And then, of course, Mexico at a third, because, Mexico's the smallest country. So there's no pretense of equality between the three nations. These nations just kind of come together. One follows the other, follows the other. And like I discussed earlier, Diane Francis, she wrote the book titled Merger of the Century, which extolled the virtues of a merger between the Canada and the United States. And we're already working towards it. Go read the Perimeter Security Agreement between Canada and the United States. I think it's called Perimeter Security and Economic Competitiveness. Yeah, they talk about how there are all these initiatives where they're working together to harmonize work at the border, how police are actually working together on both sides of the border to, for international policing or whatever you want to call it, is interesting because American cops are operating in Canada, and Washington is demanding that they have legal exemptions to Canadian law. So that means that they can come in and operate like tyrants and cowboys like they do in the United States, and they would not be accountable. There would be no accountability. Not that would happen anyways. These are all state enforcers. But Canadian cops, as thuggish and as militant as they're becoming, are far, far behind their American counterparts. There's an interesting story out of Virginia. A Virginia high school kid threatened to commit suicide. His family was Christian Alberto Sierra. He was 17, popular athlete, and his friends say he was a good-natured kid, and he began to slip into a depression and had some kind of mental breakdown, had a knife, started cutting himself. They called the police. They called 911 to kind of get him some help, and the cops came down, and the cops ran him down and shot him. He ran away because he was intimidated. I would be intimidated too. I don't want to deal with the police. They're a bunch of thugs and murderers. But yeah, so this kid ran away, and the cops shot him. The cop is trying to say that the kid lunged at him with a knife. Witnesses say that's bullshit. He didn't have time. They said, stop, and then blew his head off. Well, no, actually, I think he shot him in the chest. But nonetheless, killed the kid. So don't call the police if your child is suicidal, because they'll just kill him. It's absolutely and utterly tyrannical. And that's just one story. I think there's that homeless guy, mentally handicapped homeless guy that the cops beat to death. And these are just two stories. The most recent one is the police, no-knock raid. Police knocked down these people's doors, threw a flash grenade, burned a baby's face. It blew a hole in a baby's face. And these are the cops that want to come and operate in Canada, exempt from Canadian law. And like I said, I'm not a statist. National sovereignty doesn't mean much to me. It doesn't mean shit to me. But I'm okay with. I don't like the thugs and enforcers we have in Canada. I don't want the jacked up monkeys on steroids who are even worse from the United States coming here and blowing us up. They do every day. There's news stories of them doing utterly ridiculous things, like pointing their guns at people for routine traffic stops. There was a teenage girl who I think was giving a little attitude to a police officer and didn't roll down the window all the way, and he freaked out and pointed his gun at her for a minor traffic stop. This is the insane thuggery that comes out of the United States police force. And I'm sorry, we got to. I don't know what to do, but we got to keep those assholes out of Canada. I'm sorry, but you just can't have them here. They're disgusting. They're disgusting, subhuman pieces of shit. In one of our last stories tonight, I talked last week about the United Nations possible intervention in Detroit water shutoffs. Basically, people are having a hard time, or one way or another aren't paying their water bills in Detroit, and they're getting their water shut off. Now, activists actually have been petitioning the United Nations to step in and get involved. And according to an article from WorldNet Daily, that's exactly what they're doing. According to this article, WorldNet Daily has learned that after issuing a statement last week condemning Detroit's decision to send water shutoff notices to tens of thousands of customers behind in their payments, the UN now plans to conduct confidential policy discussions with the Obama administration, to be followed by a formal public report to the United Nations Human Rights Council. So, this is what I've said. This is what I've said is coming. This is what a lot of people have said is coming. The UN is going to take any opportunity they can to expand their scope and power. And all they need is a little crack in the door, just a tiny little crack for people to let them in. And they're going to bolt in and they're going to take it. And these activists who petitioned the UN, they've opened the crack in the door just enough for them to kind of stick their foot in. Now, right now, the UN's biggest problem is it doesn't have a military to enforce its decisions, but it can still have an impact. It can still influence through the bureaucracies. And Obama, he was like the first president to ever sit as head of the UN Security Council. He literally is very open with the UN and open to their socialist agenda. I don't understand these leftists who are always pro-Darwin, but yet they want to coddle everyone. They think that, they believe in evolution, but they're trying to stop evolution. Anyways, that's neither here nor there, but it just seems really, really bizarre. Like, the UN is getting involved in Detroit's, in a sovereign nation, in the United States of all places. The United States, which is like supposedly anti-UN all the way, is opening the door for UN intervention. Another interesting story I've been following lately is the call for the UN, a UN ad in job application for an officer to basically run disarmament and demobilization operations, and it says the duty station is in New York. The job posting is disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration officer. This is basically someone to run these campaigns within the United States. Now, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the UN is actually planning to do a gun confiscation campaign within the United States. It does seem unlikely, but, I've looked at this job posting, and I went on the website, and I searched similar jobs. There was other job postings in other countries for the same job, and a lot of them were third world countries. Now, it makes me wonder why the UN is getting involved. Why is the UN posting a job application for the Department of Peacekeeping Operations with the duty station of New York? It's interesting. I've seen YouTube videos of semi-trucks with UN vehicles on them. I don't know what that means. Is the UN planning some sort of operation within the United States? It wouldn't surprise me. I don't want to jump to this conclusion. I don't want to be the stereotypical conspiracy theorist who makes outlandish claims, but it really makes you wonder. Like, it's possible that these vehicles were just built in the U.S. and are being shipped to wherever, but there is a increasing amount of evidence to show the UN is setting their sights on the United States. It's not a secret that the U.S. economy is going to crash. The dollar cannot stay the world's reserve currency forever, and once it is no longer in that position, the whole economy is going to crash. They import more than they export. There's not a balance there. The only thing that's keeping the United States going is its place as the world's reserve currency, the petrodollar. Once that collapses, there's going to be a lot of turmoil within the United States. As in my interview, Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, the editor of the Dollar Vigilante, he documented. So times are going to be very interesting in the next little while. But is there a UN takeover, a UN operation planned in the United States? I don't think that's going to happen in the near future, but I think as the financial collapse does happen, and I don't know if it's going to be a sudden collapse or if it's going to just be a slow decline. My gut tells me it'll be a bit of a sudden collapse because once the U.S. dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency, I think things are going to fall pretty hard since then. After that, I should say. But, yeah, is the UN planning some sort of operations within the United States? Only time will tell. All right, well, that is our show. I'm Richard Heathen, and this is Liberty Machine News on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Thank you so much for watching.